Hey, Cassie,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm okay. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Before we get stuck in, I thought it'd be really great to give people an idea about what you do because you do so many different things. You span so many different styles of music. So it's difficult to kind of have a clip that represents you, right? The one clip. But, if, with your permission, I have to play um, a small clip from your performance at the Mercury Prize a few years ago, just so people get a
Okay.
vibe of yeah of some of your music and the people that you work with. That was you in full flow, directing the band.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a couple of quick fire questions just to kind of get us to know a little bit about you outside of the music.
Sure.
So, first of all, can you tell us a language that you'd love to learn?
I mean, at the moment, I've just moved to Germany, so I would love to be able to speak German, at least conversationally. That is probably, I mean, the most realistic language. But another language that I'd really love to be able to speak is Arabic. I think it's a really beautiful language. So, if I could just suddenly speak something, it would be
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? I think I might even agree with you there. Actually, Arabic is a great one. I think. Uh,
Mhm.
favorite movie? Difficult one.
Yeah, because I enjoy lots of different movies, so I don't even know if I have like one favorite, but I thought maybe the collection of like the Studio Ghibli films, if I could just sort of pretend that's one film, because they're all good. Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away and everything else. So
Okay. Great. All right. Perfect. And let me see. I know as a musician, you've traveled a lot and you've been to many different countries. But is there a country that you haven't been to that you'd love to visit?
yeah, I to be honest, I haven't spent much or any time in Asia. I've only visited India like briefly. So I would love to go to Vietnam. And I think the culture is beautiful, the food and like the language is really I like the language. It's really interesting to me because it's very different from any language that I've sort of heard before. So Vietnam.
Yeah, no, yeah. I remember watching something, and my conception of Vietnam was very different before I watched this. I can't remember what show it was, but
Mhm.
absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, very beautiful country.
Yeah,
Both and like really vibrant cities, but also like the countryside is really pretty and like the landscape. So,
yeah, it's definitely on the bucket list for sure. I think.
mhm.
So just so back to you and your music and so we've got young people watching, listening, and I guess in some ways trying to figure out what they want to do, or maybe they have an idea of what they want to do already. But this word composer comes up quite a lot, where kids have to like compose, whether it's part of their GCSEs or A levels, or even key stage two and stuff, and just that idea of what a composer is. So could you like just talk us through, for you, what does it mean to be a composer or to compose?
For me to compose is fundamentally to communicate and express yourself and connect with other people. Because for me, I think art and music in particular is just a way of um basically improving community and working on bringing people together. And I think the role of a composer is to do that, is to, whether it's through writing something that someone resonates with emotionally, or the story, or if it's to bring humor to a situation, or if it's to highlight political issues, that's all a form of communication and improving upon or adding to society and community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Just communicate. Do you think it would change if instead of saying we're going to do composing, we're like, we're going to communicate? Do you think that might change the approach that many people might take to, creating music?
Maybe if we made it more about it's a medium to express yourself, and like, so whatever you're feeling, it's a way to communicate and getting out and what get it out into the world. And maybe it would change it, because I think the word compose like sounds quite intimidating, like the whole sort of idea around what it is to compose or to make something or to create or to write music is very, or it used to be quite an elusive process, like mysterious. But if we kind of break it down to that fundamentally, it's just about communicating and expressing yourself, then yeah, it's maybe a bit easier to digest like that.
Yeah, I think so. It might help a few kids who are like, "Oh, compose, I don't know."
Yeah, exactly.
But are there a few composers that you can like touch on who actually, who inspire you, who have communicated something in their music that's helped you kind of maybe come out of your shell a bit, or helped you to see the possibilities and what you can?
Well, I mean, my biggest idols are actually, and I know that we want things to be more inclusive and like women composers as well. But my three idols are actually three guys, three male composers, being Danny Elfman, Prokofiev, and Joe Hisaishi. So Joe Hisaishi is linked to my sort of favorite films of Studio Ghibli. He wrote all of the music for those films, and for me, it was. I love how in Japanese films there's a lot of space for the music to tell the narrative, and I feel like he's one of those composers that is really good at telling stories with his music, and writing in the way that he wants to write without sort of letting other people's opinions sort of deter him from that. The same with Danny Elfman, who didn't study music, he didn't go to um, like a higher education music school. He dropped out of school and then he went on the road touring and learned all of his expertise like in real life, basically, so out of the confines of education. And I found that really inspiring, because I think there's this whole kind of stigma around people that want to call themselves composers but don't necessarily study it in a institution. But then he's made an incredible career based on that and does what he wants, plays rock music, is covered in tattoos, writes for orchestra, like, yeah, amazing. And then Prokofiev is just one of the legends that I think everyone should at some point at least check out, just to get an understanding of the orchestra and telling stories through music.
Maybe. Okay. We might, after this, might put on a couple of tracks by them, so that anyone listening and watching can have a listen.
Sure.
So that idea of communicating, right? Obviously, you can communicate things that are outside of yourself, right? So you can communicate things about society, you can communicate things about religion, you can communicate whatever it is. But about you, like, how do you put yourself into your music? Because it sounds like a really like, yeah, I put myself in my music, but like, what does that actually mean?
I think just being honest, like just writing about what you actually want to write. And so for me, like putting myself in my music is allowing myself to write about what I want to write and how I want to write it, without allowing what I think I should be writing to get in the way. So if I want to write something about, I don't know, my favorite food, I'm going to write a piece about my favorite food. If I'm going to write about like an emotion or experience that I'm having that's very personal to me, but I want to share, I'm going to do that. And I think that's the best way to remain honest in putting myself in my music. Because it's very easy to look at other composers and like, oh, how do they get to this point and how do they do all these things and try to imitate them. And I think for me, whilst it was good to do that in the early stages to get an understanding of the music and the skill set you need as a composer, at least when it comes to writing music, like you need to move beyond that to be able to then sort of, sounds so stereotypical, but like be yourself. And yeah, so that's how I do it, really.
Just when you say being honest,
Yeah.
Can you be dishonest?
I think so. I think that dishonest would be the opposite of writing what you want. It would be, okay, I'm going to just imitate this person or tell these other people's story that I don't actually resonate with. Um, I think dishonesty in music is when you're not being true to yourself and what you actually want to express and how you want to express it. And eventually that's going to get to your head. It's going to get quite boring and stifling.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think maybe that is one reason why many young people, you know, don't continue to compose, even if they have other careers in, you know, not in music. They stop as, you know, I guess there's a process of learning how other people have done it and doing in those styles that if you don't get over that to actually go and start doing your own thing, maybe it can leave you feeling like, well, why bother? Because all I'm supposed to do is, you know, do it in that way, and then I have to do this, I have to do that. The blues has to go like this, and then this has to have this form, and this has to have these.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not I guess relevant, and it's not valid in some way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like good to get an understanding of that, but then yeah, like you said, move away from it, and also not listening to a lot of criticisms that people there are all of these sort of opinions in the world of composition, especially when the word composer is applied to like classical music, of what it should sound like and how you should present it and how it should be written down. But if that's not the way that suits you expressing yourself, then yeah, I don't see why you should have to conform to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Your music doesn't necessarily do that either.
Oh, that's good to
Yeah, and I think one
hear.
of the great things about some of the stuff that you've done is that you've really said, you know, I'm going to talk about this particular topic. Like one of the pieces that, you know, I wrote about in one of the books that I did was Wake Grenfell, right? And it's just that idea of something happened and you express your thoughts and feelings through music about something that, you know, affected so many lives, you know, realistically around the world, because families passed away, etc. Whereas I guess there's many folks who, you know, who won't broach those topics. So like, how does it feel for you to have, you know, for example, that piece or anything you've done with Seed and, you know, and Ballet Boys and anything else that you've done, to then see other people, you know, buying your records, listening to it, talking about it? How does that feel? Even, you know, you've got a couple of pieces in the ABRSM syllabus coming as well. How does that feel to know that there are people who are learning their craft on the piano, for example, who are playing your music?
Yeah, I mean the ABRSM one in particular is quite important to me because I think music with like writing music that young people actually like, because I feel like ABRSM, some of the stuff when I was growing up I didn't enjoy it, so I was like, I want to write something that people resonate with. So to hear that there are like young sax players who have like learned that piece makes me feel quite happy, because yeah, I just wanted to write a melody that people like, and it seems like it's sort of drawn a few people to it, which is really nice. And then outside of that, like especially when it's more political focused music and or expressing my own sort of mental health or personal thing, when I hear that people resonate and buy that music is quite it's a really beautiful experience, because it feels like I've done my job of communicating and expressing myself, but then it also resonating and joining, not joining hands, but joining with other people mentally through music, and creating this sort of sonic community, which I think is really important to keep cultivating, because I think we're so separated by so many things. Like music being one of those things that brings people together is great. And if that's my music, then that feels really yeah, it feels really wonderful.
Imagine. And so like in that process of, you know, I guess at some point deciding, all right, I'm going to do this, right? One of the things that I really want to, you know, talking to lots of people about today and for the rest of the festival is about skills, because very easy for us to say, oh yeah, be honest in your music. It's easy to say,
Mm.
don't worry about what people say, just do your thing.
Yeah.
But there are skills that I guess some of the people we spoke to earlier didn't have when they started, but as they're doing it, realizing, oh, okay, I actually need to get better at this or I need to get better at that. So could you
Yeah.
share a couple of things? Maybe it's software, maybe it's we're talking earlier to someone about admin, and she was talking about that side of things on a computer all day, and you think, you don't just turn up at a gig and play this
Mm.
behind the scenes. Could you share a couple of things a couple of skills that you've acquired and you've learned about and you've had to cultivate that when you started on your journey, you never thought you'd have to be about?
Yeah, sure. I actually, what did I write? I wrote a couple of things down because there's quite a few things really. And like one of the main things actually, which I think sort of encompasses a lot of what you've just said, is treating yourself as a small business. Because I think it's very easy in music to just think, okay, I'm just going to write the music and I'm going to enjoy the process, and that's going to be sort of the main focus. But like, if you want to be able to make a living from it, um, or even part of your living from it, you need to be able to be good at social media in some form. You need to be like get on top of emails and keep so admin definitely. Not be afraid of sharing your work. I think I remember in the beginning stages, a lot of artists feel that it's not a humble thing to share and promote your work and share what you've done, but like sharing on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or wherever is actually quite an important thing of getting more work and also people knowing who you are. So sort of getting over that humility of like, oh, I don't want to like, is it? Yeah, just do it. And then I think what else really? Money management, definitely. Especially if you are working in so for me as someone that runs a band with 10 other people now, so that band Seed is now an 11-piece band. It means that the money from, for example, doing a festival comes to me, and then I have to then pay everyone. So I have spreadsheets to keep on top of that to make sure that like my finances stay in order, because I think it's very easy for music to be presented as sort of go with the flow kind of industry, but it's important for yourself and your well-being, financially, emotionally, everything, to keep on top of those things as well. And not being afraid to network as well. Like I'm quite a shy, introverted person, I would say, unless I'm around the right people. Um, but like I think putting yourself out there, like introducing yourself to people, not being afraid to send an email saying, oh, I don't know, can I be the assistant composer on this show you're writing? Or can I meet you for a coffee to get advice? One of the first things I did when I moved to Berlin was email this composer who I really admire. Can we meet for tea? Ended up inviting me to have tea with him and gave me a CD, gave me all this advice. And like, I think it's just being brave enough to do those kinds of things as well for yourself.
Absolutely. I think it's so interesting. Some of the things that you said just now, Sue said that about just, being personable and just asking the questions. And Lee from Dot Inc. said the same thing about just being being at an event and being like, all right, we'll talk to you. And Dominic said the same things. Like, you don't know, sometimes, you don't know who this person is.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be a cleaner, it could be a CEO, you don't know, but sometimes it's just have a conversation. You never know what can happen from there.
Yeah.
So like in the spirit of that, is there any little bits of advice, maybe one or two things that you could share with any musicians, any young musicians in particular out there who maybe want to become a composer or maybe are trying to figure out what they want to do in music in general?
I think two things, like to the first thing being not to be afraid of not conforming to what the stereotype of a composer is. Like, I think, as I said earlier, like writing in the way you want to, with the musicians you want to, like, is, I think, so important to making sure that you are actually doing something you enjoy and like you create a career or hobby, if it's something you want to do on the side, that you actually want to invest in. And then the second thing, not be afraid to experiment and try things as well. I think that's all part of the learning process. Like, even if you listen back to it and you're like, I don't like that, or like it's performed and you're like, that didn't go as well as I thought. Like, it's rather than thinking of it as a failure, to be able to look at it and be like, okay, what do I learn from this? Like, how can it be improved? Or maybe it's not improved, I'm going to scrap it. Like anything really is a learning experience and not there to deter you from the path of being an artist.
Absolutely. I think everything you said has been it's so insightful. I found this conversation to be really rich with stuff.
Yeah, that's good to
Really.
hear.
And you know, as much as I was reflecting on a few of the other conversations we've had today, and as much as, you know, put this on for young people, I'm sitting here gaining a lot myself and thinking maybe I need to be better at spreadsheets, for example.
Yeah.
Once again, Cassie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all for the inspiration that you are. Again, like, you're one of the people who inspired this book. So, you know,
Cheers.
yeah, there's evidence.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me again.
Take care.
Cheers.